Welcome from Indianapolis. I am Derwin Smiley. Today is the first show in a series of educational reform. I'm glad you are with me, and that show starts right now. Mr. Karega Rousch is the director of Stand for Children here in the Circle City of Indianapolis. Mr. Rousch, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brother Smiley, for the opportunity.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Dr. Eugene White is the superintendent of IPS, Indianapolis Public Schools. Doctor, it's always an honor to have you back on the show.
Good to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Yes, sir. You know, this show is dealing with educational reform. And Dr. White, I have to go to you first because there's a lot of controversy surrounding you in these days, specifically if you was going to stay as superintendent or if you was going to go. I want to ask you this question. Why didn't you just come out and tell everybody that you wanted to stay as superintendent for IPS?
Well, basically, I came out and told the Scott Elliott with the Star News that I was interested in two positions in the Southeast because that's where I'm from. And those were only two positions I was interested in. I get approached at least 5 or 6 different times a year about jobs, and I've never had an interest. But when I retire, I'm looking probably to be in the Southeast. I'm not sure. And so that was my interest in that particular area. But once those particular options did not pan out, I told my board and I told Scott Elliott that I'm going to be here until I end my career. And I think basically that's all he needed to know. And I think the public needs to be aware of that also.
So why did you wait so long?
Well, really, I didn't. After the process was over in Mobile, the following week, he asked me the question, and that's when I told him.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say to your critics now that you didn't get neither job opportunity? What would you say to them when they say, why don't you just leave?
Well, there were 72 candidates that applied for the job in Greenville, South Carolina, and I was one of the 3 finalists, and it came down to me and the deputy superintendent of the district. And in Mobile, there were 3 finalists, and I was one of them, and that came down to a 2-2-1 vote, and the board made a decision for the interim who wasn't even a candidate. Now, there were dynamics in both of those situations, but the bottom line is I have the option and prerogative to pursue a different position. But if I'm ready to go, I will leave because I can get another job. But I want to be in the Southeast, and quite frankly, I didn't try to hide that from anyone. I was very open with it, and that's my particular option as a professional, and I'm past that time when I have to work in the state of Indiana because I can retire in the state and quite frankly get my retirement and work somewhere else. But I've been one to try to put a program together and stay and make sure it works. I've had many colleagues that go from place to place to place to place, and that's just not my style. So I don't think I have anyone to explain anything to or apologize to. So, but that's the situation.
Mr. Rousch, you are over Stand for Children, Indianapolis chapter. Tell me, what is Stand for Children?
Well, thanks for asking. So, Stand for Children, we are an education advocacy nonprofit with one central mission, and that's to make sure all of our children graduate high school prepared for and with access to a college education, whether that's a 2-year degree, a 4-year degree, or an apprenticeship program, or obviously servicing our military. We do that in 4 primary ways. The first way is engaging parents and students to be more effective advocates for great schools for their kids and for kids across our community. Secondly, we do that is advocate for policies and investments that can truly create the conditions for our teachers and educators to do their very best work. Third, those policies and investments that we advocate for, we make sure they're implemented effectively so that kids and families actually receive the benefit of the different changing in conditions and additional resources that are provided. And then fourth, we will make sure that parents and teachers are involved at the ballot box. So we will endorse and engage candidates for elected office that can be champions for children.
So what is the outcome of this, of Stand for Children, or what are you trying to do? What's the problem with IPS or public schools as a whole that you need a Stand for Children organization?
So for any reform to be sustainable, we've got to have a mobilized army of parents and teachers and other concerned community folks that are trained to be amazing advocates for kids long term. Important to remember a little bit of history in that it's only been the last maybe 40 or 50 years, which from a historical perspective is a short period of time, that our community expectations have changed in demanding that all kids receive an excellent education. It wasn't that long ago when there were kids, primarily kids of color, kids with disabilities, kids living in poverty, where it was okay for them to not graduate high school. It was okay for them to be in lower tracks. Our community expectations have changed. Public education needs to be applauded for providing universal access, where we now have a place for every kid to go, have a principal, have a teacher, and have an educational experience. Our expectations have changed, where we now expect universal excellence for all kids. And the infrastructure we developed for universal access probably isn't the same infrastructure we need for universal excellence. So that's for all of us that are in this space of trying to make our schools work for all of our kids, or struggling with that question of how do we move from a system of universal access to a system of universal excellence for all kids.
So Dr. White, you hear that? So does public schools have that excellence and drive to establish seniors in high school that are coming out to go into college?
Well, one of the 4 district values for IPS is excellent. We believe in scholarship, excellence, respect, and courage. So we would like to motivate and inspire our students to be excellent. Realistically, we will have some students that will be excellent, such as Robert Hawthorne, who went to Harvard, had a 3.5 GPA, made the roaring team this year, or the young man who went to West Point, who came to this country 8 years ago and couldn't speak English. He ended up going to West Point. Both of those young men had something in common. They had a solid family background. They had people who supported them. We have some kids with no support. So in order to get kids to take advantage of opportunities and options, you got to have some other people besides school people in the mix. We push our people and say that poverty is no excuse and that they have to look past that and do the best they can for the child. But realistically, when your kids start out behind, you got to try to catch them up and keep them up. And that's more challenging to us than it is in Hamilton Southeastern or Carmel or what have you. But I think we do not doubt and we do not disagree with the desire for excellence, and we have to keep working for that.
Mr. Rousch, why is it so hard today to get parents on board to see that education is a great aspect or part of their child's life?
There's a fine line between using the challenges that kids bring with them to school as reasons to not teach them well. And so we believe that parents send their very best kid to school every day. And it's the responsibility for us in education, as well as for important folks in our faith-based community, our nonprofit community, to engage, but come in with the assumptions that most parents are doing the very best that they can, and we have to find creative ways of helping them to become even better for their kids.
We have to take a break, but stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We will continue our conversation with Dr. Eugene White, Superintendent of IPS, Indianapolis Public Schools, and Mr. Karega Rousch, the Director of Stand for Children here in the wonderful Circle City of Indianapolis. As we went to break, we was talking about how we can get the parents to get more involved into their children's education. Tell me, what is the benefit of a parent saying, I want to send my child away from public school, but go to a school of choice?
So our best evidence tells us, which is the case with our public charter schools, with our magnet schools, even with some of our traditional public schools, that what parents care about the most aren't those legal distinctions between schools. They want a great school that fits the unique needs that their kids have. I'm a dad, Brother Smiley. I've got a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. And in some ways they're very similar, in some ways they're very different. So what my wife and I are looking for as we begin this school process, looking for a school that's excellent and meets their unique needs. And that's the case with most parents. So irrespective of what kind of a school it is, it's important that we have great schools in neighborhoods all across our city that meets each child's unique needs. And in addition to that, we very much believe, because all the evidence tells us, that parents who choose their kids' school, if that's their neighborhood school, if that's one of the great magnet programs in IPS, if that's a public charter school, even if that's a private school, the evidence suggests those parents are much more involved and engaged in their kids' lives. So we are interested in finding ways of making sure that parents, again, assuming parents are coming at this with the best of intentions, equipping them with what they need in order to make amazing choices, school choices for their kids.
Dr. White, do you think there will be an exodus from public schools or from IPS going into charter schools and school of choices?
Well, I think there's already been an exodus. IPS has 21 charter schools already in our boundary. Over the last 8 years, we've lost about 9,000 students plus to charter schools, and with the addition of some other charter schools, we may lose some more. I think what Brother Rousch said is very, very important. In our view, it's a public marketplace. It's a competition. And what we have to do in IPS is to compete by providing the best options, the best programs in schools for our kids. If we don't do that, we're going to lose them. I mean, it's very important to know that these are not IPS students. These are the community's children, okay? And as a community, you want what's best for your child. And so if we can't get them, then they're free to go other places. Of course, I don't think it's right that we have two sets of rules, one for charter schools, one for us, and I've made all that known over the years, but the bottom line is, in spite of that, you got to offer things that parents are going to be pleased with and satisfied with so they can bring their students to your school. And we've proven this time and time again, that if you get the right program, you can get the kids and you can get the parents. And so that's our challenge, and so we're continuing to offer additional and more innovative programs for parents and students. And the best way to do all of that is to continue to get the best teacher in the classroom. And that's what we're working to get, the best teachers in the classroom. And it's very, very important that regardless of whether it's a neighborhood school, a magnet school, or any other school, you got to have quality teachers, you got to have quality leadership, because the quality assurance person in the school is that administrator, that principal, that director who's in charge. And the most valuable person in that school becomes that teacher in that classroom, and everything has to be focused that particular way. So I believe, and quite frankly, we lose more students to the townships and moving away than we do to charter schools. I mean, that's year in and year out, and our data proves that. So, but we got a very, very mobile population. We are the most mobile school district in the state of Indiana. We got one elementary school with a mobility factor of over 300. And so not only do we have parents who are making decisions in quality schools, but we also have other parents, because of economic needs or family concerns or society, they're moving anyway. And some of our kids they may be in the same school 2 or 3 times in a school year, and they're very, very mobile. And so we have some parts of our district where on the northeast side, where we have Lawrence, Warren, and IPS, they go between those 3 school districts. You may see them 1 or 2 different times a year, but still, all of those schools need to be able to serve those kids so they won't be compromised by their social or family situation. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to provide quality choices regardless of where they go.
I think I wanted to piggyback on something you said. You said there are 2 sets of rules. Expound on that. What are the 2 sets of rules?
Well, basically, and I have the evidence to kind of prove this. We are public schools, and we take everyone in. Charter schools are public, and their population doesn't seem that they take everyone in. A good example is Tinley. Tinley is in the middle of the city, in the meadows, okay? But Tinley doesn't have enough special ed students to have a subgroup. It only takes 30, okay? That can't happen by accident. When IPS has 22% special ed. Same thing with ELL. So I'm saying, not only that, in terms of who teaches in the classroom, their particular standards are a little more liberal than ours. And we've fought over some other things too related to that area. So when it comes to an even playing field, it hasn't been that particular way. But on the other hand, we have transportation, and they don't. We have many times facilities that they don't have. So when you look at it, the excuses won't change anything. You still got to work with what you got to do the best you can for children.
Mr. Rousch, you heard what Dr. White said about the two different sets of rules. What's your take on that?
So we very much believe that the freedoms and flexibilities that many of our public charter schools are able to access should be the case for our school leaders and our principals and other folks in all public schools. It just makes sense to attract the kind of talent that Dr. White is exactly right about, that we need to have the conditions in place so that we can attract amazing teachers and principals for our kids, because truly that's what's going to move the ball. So, and it's also, as I indicated before, we think it's a false argument and a false debate around traditional public schools or public charter schools or magnet schools in that case, right? Because parents aren't paying a lot of attention to those distinctions. What parents care about is this school a great school for my kid? And I think the conversation we need to have is, how do we expand great schools and great programs, irrespective of what their legal designation is, to all of our neighborhoods? Because we truly do have some neighborhoods in our community that have just been left out. And you talk to parents and teachers in those places, and they'll tell you, I'm waiting for a great school and a great number of schools for my neighborhood and my community. I think that's the conversation we need to have, not necessarily a debate around different legal designations of schools.
Dr. White, how do you sell a parent on IPS?
Well, it depends on what type of program they want in IPS. One of the things that we tell parents that we provide opportunities for their young people that are some of the best in the state and in the country. When Michelle Reed was in Washington, D.C., and she, at the end of her house cleaning process, when the mayor wasn't reelected and she was leaving, she said that she was proud of three things. One, she put phys ed back into the elementary, music and art, okay? That was a major achievement for her. We have music and art and phys ed in every elementary school. Matter of fact, we have instrumental music and vocal music. A lot of times people take that for granted. There are rural schools in this state, some urban schools that don't have that at the elementary level. We think we provide the kind of academic options and co-curricular, extracurricular options that our students have a great opportunity to be successful. So we share that with them. We share with them the other resources that are available. We have probably the best special education program in the state of Indiana. So there are a lot of things that, depending on the needs of the parent, we try to converse with them based on what they need and a broader type of opportunity that we provide.
We have to take another break, but stay with us. Mr. Rousch, as we went to break, I want to ask you this question. What is the benefit of a parent choosing to go to a school of choice?
So I would frame the question a little bit in that we think that all schools should be schools of choice, with certainly preference for your neighborhood school. But we think all of our evidence really suggests that a parent who chooses a school, if that's a school down the street, if that's a school across town, if that's a school someplace else, those parents tend to be more involved. They tend to be more engaged because they have said, this is where I want my child to go to. And that's a really important point in that we need to create a system where parents are active consumers, right, and active participants in thinking through, right, what's the best fit for their kid. It's one of the things that Stanford Children is currently doing. We've put out the Indianapolis School Chooser, an Indianapolis School Chooser coaching program that is really designed especially for those parents that are in those transition years. So entering kindergarten for the first time, going from 5th to 6th grade in some cases, and going from 8th to 9th grade, to really help parents think through your neighborhood school, the school down the street, may be the absolute best fit for your kid. There may be another school that may be an even better fit, and help them to think through what their different options are to be able to make the very best selection for their kid.
Give me a success story of school of choice.
Well, I'll give you a success story of a parent, and we'll call her Jane, because I haven't talked to her about sharing her story. So Jane has a 6th grader and a preschooler. And she is in the process now of really looking at a different middle school, for her child, because the middle school that she's at just isn't working. We had a chance to engage her in a really good conversation about her options, and she thinks she's found another middle school that she's going to look at for next year, because we always tell parents, unless your child is being bullied or harassed, you should never leave your school in the middle of the year. All of our evidence tells us that that's going to be worse for a child. So being able next year to think about that choice for her. It's also interesting in engaging her that there are not enough really high quality middle and high schools we have in our community. We don't have enough great schools, throughout our community, but especially at the middle and high school level. I know a lot of folks are working really hard on making that difference. And so, but she's found a school that she hopes is going to be better for her child. When we think about her preschooler, try to say this without being emotional, she is just really passionate about having a high quality early education experience, for her child, because her child is one who has some deficits coming in, and she really wants to make sure that her child isn't like many of our other kids that are in preschool programs but aren't coming to kindergarten ready. So as we talk about early child education is a big conversation in our community right now, and we absolutely believe that we've got to expand access to early childhood education. At the same time, we've got to expand the quality that exists, so that our students who are first accessing pre-K are entering into our kindergartens ready, not just academically but also socially, because that building block is just so critically important. So that's both a success story and a challenge that we have, which is the case with most parents that we intersect with and access. They can tell you stories of hopes, of dreams, but also of concerns and heartbreak that we think it's really important to then be able to connect them to a larger network of parents and teachers across the community that are Stanford Children members, working together to make sure all of our kids are at grade level and all of our kids are graduating ready for what's next.
Dr. White, you heard what Mr. Rousch said about the middle schools. I taught in the middle school for
5 years, right?
6 years. This was 5-6 years at Longfellow Middle School.
Right.
What's the process or the plan to make the middle schools and high schools better?
But we don't have middle schools really anymore. This year we have two. We have Harshman Magnet Middle School and Emma Donnan. We're losing Emma Donnan. Next year we're going to add Longfellow as a magnet middle school. We have two magnet middle schools. What we have, and in 2 years we'll add a third magnet middle school. But our middle school students will be in either K-8 schools, or they will be in community high schools starting at grade 7, or magnet high schools starting at grade 6. But we have kind of gone away from middle schools because we want to eliminate transitions and big changes in our students' lives, and we want them to get focused on graduating as soon as possible. So we have moved 6 grades back to elementary some time ago, and middle schools are 7th and 8th grade, but now they're going to be strictly magnets in our particular operation, and we're going to be dealing with K-8 schools, 7-12 schools, and 6-12 magnet schools.
Dr. White, today I received something in the mail and it blew my mind. It was a postcard about Gambo, new accelerated school. Tell me, what is that part of the new IPS, or is that just a slogan?
No, it's not a slogan. When you look at in our plan over the next 3 years, we're going to add 24 either new schools or new programs that are going to be magnet programs. The reason we're doing this is because our magnet programs are so popular with our parents. And so if they want those type of opportunities, we're expanding those opportunities. Gamble is a college prep high school. It will start with 9th grade. We'll add a grade a year until we get them through. And then we'll have a max of 600 students, max, 150 students per grade level. It will be an IB school, okay? It will be the only high school we have with an entrance requirement. So it will be a different kind of school. But we needed that because we have a number of students who go K-8 in Center for Inquiry schools. They go 2-8 in our academic academy at Seitner, and they go K-8 in our Montessori schools. So when they get out of 8th grade, there are not that many choices for those families and those parents who want a different education. And so we end up losing a lot of those kids to the Chattards or the Cathedrals, to the North Centrals, or the Heron schools, and we decided that we need to have an IPS option for them because our traditional options of Tech or Northwest or Washington, these people want a smaller setting than that. And so we decided we'll go that way and started our first boutique high school. In 2 years, we'll start our second boutique high school, and that high school will be addressing college readiness and career vocational readiness. And when those students graduate, they're going to receive a high school diploma and a 2-year associate degree. But these are choices that we want parents and students to have to make, and hopefully that will give them a better opportunity to have a unique experience in IPS.
Can I say one thing about that very quickly? So I'm really glad that there is an increased focus on college and career readiness, something that's really important. We have a lot of work to do in that area. The Commission on Higher Education just last month issued some information where about 1/3 of our kids that graduated, not even our kids that didn't graduate, but those that graduated and went into an Indiana public college or university had to have English or math remediation or both. In Center Township, that was 50%. So we've got a lot of work to do there. But as my pastor always talked about, leave folks with some hope. Right, in that there are examples of amazing schools that are graduating kids ready for what's next. The question that our community has to grapple with is how can we make that the norm, not the exception?
And that's not only in Central Indiana. If you look at the ACT test results for the state of Indiana, 30% of the graduates in this state can pass the battery. There are 4 tests in the battery: English, mathematics, social science, and science. 30%, that means the rest of them are taking at least one remediation course. So in Indiana, we're getting better, but we got to continue to prepare our students for the rigors and challenges of the next level.
Here's Dr. Eugene White, Superintendent of Indianapolis Public Schools, and Mr. Karega Rousch, the Director of Stand for Children here in Indianapolis. I thank you both for coming on.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes,
Thanks
sir.
again for the invitation.
Yes, sir.
Visit the Derwin Smiley Show online for weekly blogs, previous shows, the television schedule, sponsorship information, or to post a comment or show idea. We want to hear from you and find out how we can inspire the greatness in you. Log on to www.thederwinsmileyshow.com today.
Thank you for tuning in to the Derwin Smiley Show this evening, where we discuss education reform. And remember, it's not a debate between public versus private or school of choice. It is all about what is the best education we can offer our children. And if you want to watch the show again, you can visit us on the World Wide Web at www.thederwinsmileyshow.com. And remember, my sole purpose is to inspire the greatness in you. I'll see you next time.